Hello, Lothar here. Right, the Santa Ana winds have died down for a bit, so I can get outside and do a video again. This video is going to be on getting to the Southern Terminus and some very quick tips for preparing for the start and maybe the first couple of days of your hike. So, getting to the start from San Diego. I'm going to say San Diego because it's just that's probably the main hub that most people will be going through. Now you've got various ways to get obviously into San Diego, but the two sort of main areas I would focus on would be the transit centres that would be relevant to people on the PCT. There are two main ones that I would normally be either using or advising people to use. First of all, you've got the Old Town Transit Centre. That's probably slightly more in town. And then you've got the El Cajon Transit Centre, which is the one you really want if you want to get like the buses, there's also probably a lot of angels operate around there as well to give rides out. The Old Transit Centre is where the official shuttle goes, and it really depends where you're staying in San Diego as to which transit centre is closest to you. The shuttle, as I said, costs 75 plus tips, so you're probably looking at about $88 to $90. That's part of the reason why I don't use it, because I think it's too expensive, but the service is very good. It goes from the Old Town Transit Centre, goes via REI, the store, and I think it stops at the Green Store in Campo and also the Campo Post Office. So it's helpful for people who just really can afford it and also just maybe want an easy time getting to the start. But the regular bus is actually just as easy, really, but it doesn't do the stops at the fancy stores, which you might want to maybe do the night before. I'm going to talk about the bus I take. I've taken the last 3 seasons. That is the bus number 894 from the El Cajon Transit Centre, and it's eastbound, and you take that bus and it takes you all the way into Campo and beyond, so make sure you get off. But the bus drivers know all the PCT hikers and they know where to stop, and they drop you off at the Green Store, which is just a perfect place where you can nip in, get a few last minute resupplies and maybe a small gas canister, and then hike up to CLEEF, which is about maybe half a mile, quarter mile, half mile up the road. The shuttle basically takes a slightly different route because it's going via the store, but they arrive pretty much at the same place. They go to the Green Store and take you to CLEEF, which is probably the one place I would recommend everyone aim for, ideally for the night before if you can, because CLEEF is the what's called Camp Lockett, I think, event and equestrian centre or facility, and they also have a hiking camper area specifically for PCT hikers, which I think costs now $15 a night. Basically, you can turn up. There's no reservation needed. You can reserve online, I think, but you might as well just turn up and just pay your dollars. Basically, there's angels there and there's volunteers there, so that's very easy. The other ways you can get a ride ideally maybe from the Old Town Transit Centre or the El Cajon Transit Centre is the Angel Network. Post hopefully your desires, shall we say, your desired itinerary, and maybe an angel can help you, or then you may have to fit in with the itinerary of an angel. But both of those transit centres are really good depending on where you stay in San Diego. If you're staying the night before, if you're happen to be your accommodation is closer to the Old Town Transit Centre and you want to get to the El Cajon Transit Centre, that's incredibly easy. There's a Green Line train that goes regularly, very regularly. I think it's a train come tram. I think it's like $2 or $2.50. And it's 40 minutes between the two on the tram, and it's so you can go depending on where you are. If you're closer to the El Cajon Transit Centre, you can go, and you want to get the shuttle, then you can go into the Old Town Transit Centre. Takes you 40 minutes, and vice versa. So they're the two hubs that I would probably consider people will be working around, either the Angel Network, the shuttle, or the buses. But the bus goes from the El Cajon Transit Centre, and it's the bus number 894 going eastbound. Now there is another bus, which is the 888. It goes a slightly different route, different times, and it comes from goes into the other side of Campo, so it leaves you probably about a 2-mile hike or hitch within Campo to get you to the Green Store. So the 888 would be my last resort bus if for some reason you need to take that bus at that particular time, but the 894 would be the target bus. They only operate Monday to Friday. They do not operate at weekends, and it's $8. So that's the attractiveness of it. So certainly if you're a couple, that's a very cheap way of getting to the shuttle. The start, and the shuttle is probably for people who really can afford it. But the service, I can't deny, is very, very good. So, right, whatever route you take, and if you arrive privately by family and friends driving you, or you might even take an Uber or pre-booked Uber. You arrive at Campo, and Campo, the main sort of waypoints you want to think about in Campo, you've got the green store, which is great for those last minute quick purchases. You've got the Campo post office. Remember, post office hours are very limited, so make sure you know what the post office hours are, depending on whenever you send a parcel. They're not all the same. Not every post office has exactly the same hours, so beware of that. And also you've got CLEEF, which is the equestrian centre, which is 0.7 miles north of the starting point of the PCT. The CLEEF itself is actually on the PCT, so what most hikers, or I'd recommend most hikers would do, is try and arrive the night before your planned hike. Arrive at CLEEF by any of the methods I've suggested, and then go and listen to the evening talk, where the volunteers give you a nice safety talk and briefing. They give you the water report, things to basically be careful of. Basically, don't get yourself killed. It's a fun but very, very great informative talk, and you can ask any questions you like. And it's for anybody who stays at CLEEF, so you don't have to take the shuttle to benefit from that talk. The campground area is very broad, so as I said, there's no reservations there. You basically just pitch your tent, and if the weather's particularly bad, there is a sort of overhang cover area which you can sort of huddle under if you really, really have to. So that's how you get to the start, or CLEEF. Now the actual terminus, or the very start, is actually down by the border, so you'd walk from CLEEF about 0.7 miles uphill to the border wall. And there you'll see the PCT monument. There's nothing else around it, it's just a PCT monument. Now when hike season starts, you will likely see a car parked up there, or a little truck, which is the PCTA volunteer. Now what they normally do each year is they have someone there reminding people of leave no trace principles, answering any questions. They're normally people who've either hiked or are very familiar with the trail. They're also giving out these plastic sort of tang tags, or PCT tags. Now to get one, you actually do have to show your permit. I learned that a couple of years, or last year, when I was hiking on local permits, and they said they wouldn't give me one because it's only for people who've got full official PCT permits. So you take your obligatory photographs. You may want to wave up Mexico and do all the normal things you want to do at the start. There's a log book actually in the monument, just around the back, where it's in a waterproof bag, and you sign your name if you want to. You don't actually have to show your permit at any point, because at that point you're not in any permitted area. You don't actually you're not entering a permitted area until mile 13, when you enter Cleveland National Forest. You're actually free to roam wherever you like. The people I would say, show your permit to the PCTA people, of course. You don't have to, but I would. The one sort of thing I would say is, if you do arrive at the terminus at odd times, especially at night, don't be surprised if the Border Patrol maybe pop down and just maybe check you out. They always are very nice and polite. Just say, yeah, and as soon as they realise you're a PCT hiker, they leave you alone. But they are obliged to pop down occasionally. If something looks odd, they do come down, and it's not. People might say, "Oh, they're checking permits." No, they're just checking that you are a PCT hiker. Okay, what else? Well, let's assume you've arrived at CLEEF and you're planning to stay overnight. The one thing I would urge you to do the night before is check your water filter. Now, what can happen, as I've mentioned in my water filter video, if you've used it in the past, they can dry out, and so what can happen is a PCT hiker for the first time can arrive, and the first time he tries to filter water, or he or she filters water, they find, oh, it's blocked, it's not working, and they try and buy a new filter. All it means normally is that you just need to re-moisten the excuse me, showing it's live and not edited. Right, it's you just need to moisten the fibers of your filter, and that's easily done, and you can basically rejuvenate your filter. If you're having problems, just ask one of the angels or the volunteers at CLEEF, and they will help you. They've got backflush syringes and places where you can soak filters, so don't worry too much about that. The thing you really want to pay attention to, as I said, is safety talk, but also the water and weather situation. Now, the first thing you probably, or the thing you might be considering even before you leave home or leave San Diego, is what do I do with my snow gear? Where do I send it? I would, as your hike time approaches, I would look online and look at a website called San Cajon, which I'll put the link here, which is the San Jacinto Trail Report. Now that is starts at basically mile 151 and goes all the way to 205, and it covers the Mount San Jacinto area. That is the most likely place you will need to send your snow gear, depending on the snow conditions. Now, if you're an early starter, I would probably send it up to Paradise Valley Cafe, which is mile 151.8, which is probably the place where you'll first need snow gear. Now, if you don't, then you can just go into Idlewild and send it forward. But most years, most hikers would need snow gear at mile 151.8, Paradise Valley Cafe. Now, so you can send that, or you can send that from home, or you can send that from the Campo post office. But yeah, again, look at the weather report, see what the recommendations are, and if they keep saying spikes and ice axes are required at especially Apache Peak, which is the approach to San Jacinto, and if San Cajon, the guy who does these video trail reports, recommends certain gear, then I would definitely send it to Paradise Valley Cafe. Okay. So the other thing you want to check is also the general weather report where you are. So at CLEEF, and do this regularly, certainly this March and sometimes through April, you're going to have some, or very likely to have some weather fronts coming through. And this is where you might just want to hunker down for a couple of days, because the weather, it's just cold, it's miserable. There might be some snow, but there might be some heavy rain. And what most hikers do in those situations is they try and just time their hike for when the weather's bad, that they're near a town or near accommodation. So if you have a front moving in, certainly in the first 100 miles or so, then you could obviously overstay at CLEEF if you need to, if the weather's really bad. You can maybe book a cabin at Lake Morena, which is the first stop at mile 20. They also have a campground there as well for PCT hikers. You could also hunker down at Boulder Oaks, which is a campground, but there is a host there who obviously will try and help as much as you can. There's also a campsite at Sibbets Flats, which is I think mile 33, I think to check, which has a camp host there as well, so there's some shelter there. And then you've got Mount Laguna, you've got campgrounds, and you've got Mount Laguna Hostel, and you've got Mount Laguna cabins as well. So I think the hostel is cool. I'll put the link to the hostel as well. They're places where I would normally try and stay if the weather's really, really bad. But in general, I would just camp and follow the itinerary, and you shouldn't have too many problems. Certainly in the first 100 miles or so, because it is actually got surprisingly a large number of campgrounds you can use. It is very well supported, and there's some towns like Lake Morena where you can resupply after 20 miles. You can get hot food and resupply at Lake Morena at mile 20. You can get hot food and resupply at Mount Laguna at mile 42. You can get basically a town called Julian off Scissors Crossing at mile 77, and a gear store called Two Foot Adventure, so you can really sort of resupply and sort out any gear problems in Julian. So if you're wondering how much food and stuff should I be carrying from the start, just remember your first stop is in 20 miles. So depending on your hike pace, that might be 1 day or maybe 2 days at most. So don't be tempted to carry way too much food. Like a couple of hikers I met, well, you meet hikers every year, they do overplan, and I think you do pack your fears a little bit. There was one of the worst case scenarios I saw, met somebody who was carrying 12 days of food when they arrived at mile 20, and that they learned their lesson and they sent a lot of it forward, thank goodness. I would probably only carry 2 or 3 days of food at most. I tend to also, certainly from the start, I might carry a couple of those Mountain House and Peak Refuel food. I always keep one of those or two of those in my pack as a treat, and then I use just the local resupply stores. It may not be like ramen or something like that, or tuna fish and things like that, or mash, and keep the expensive meals for basically as a treat. So that is what I would urge you not to carry too much food from the start. Remember, you can resupply, basic resupply and hot food. You have a full meal at mile 20. You can resupply, basic resupply and full hot meal mile 42, and do the same at 77. So don't be too tempted to overpack, certainly from the start. The other thing is the water report. Now, depending on the conditions, the desert section can catch people out, because if it's hot, then it can be really hot. And on the first section to Lake Morena, you've got basically a sort of a steady desert walk, slight climb up to a ridge, and then you descend down to what's called Hauser Creek. That's at mile 13, mile 15, sorry. And ideally, every year you really would like that to be flowing, because after that you've got a big climb out of Hauser Creek to get up to Lake Morena. The problems for hikers can start where Hauser Creek is not, if it's not flowing. And again, you'll get this information from CLEEF. Then you might have to carry a lot of water from Campo, or maybe mile 4, where sometimes there's a flowing stream there, all the way to Lake Morena, and that's a long haul. So be very careful to listen to the water report and have the capacity to carry maybe up to 6 litres. You may not have to carry that all the time. Most of the time you're carrying 1 or 2 litres, but in certain desert sections where water is maybe a prime water source is not flowing that for that particular time, then you might need to carry maybe up to 5 or 6 litres. So I carry a couple of 1 or 1.5 litre smart water bottles, and I have one of those Knock Vecto flexible water bottles, such that if I do have to carry a lot of water, an extra water, then I keep that handy, so I can carry that water as in that flexible bag. Okay, so hopefully you're not carrying too many luxuries. I mean, remember the luxuries you might carry on, say, a weekend hike. A lot of them you probably can do without on a through hike, but you need to kind of figure out which ones you want. If you want any advice from an angel or one of the volunteers or camp hosts, they are all very, very familiar with PCT gear and hikers' needs. So if you need to drop something, sometimes they can maybe help assist you send something home if you ask nicely. But there's also the hiker boxes which can fill up with some really unusual items, certainly at Lake Morena and at Mount Laguna. I think I saw 6 pump sacks from the used for pumping up your sleeping pads at Lake Morena. I mean, I've seen knives, weapons that people just realise that axe head they don't need. You see some bizarre items. If you want any advice on gear, just ask for it. Certainly around CLEEF, they've probably got spares. So if you're having problems with gear or you want to consider alternatives, they may have a hiker box there as well of stuff that you might find useful. So or you can contribute to. At CLEEF, the other thing that's worth considering is checking out Farout, just making sure you know the waypoints up to Lake Morena, where the water sources are on the Farout app, and that you've downloaded the background maps and you're familiar with how to see where the hiker comments are. And the other thing that's good to do is do an in-reach message. So if you've got one of those SOS, hopefully you have one of those SOS messengers, it's probably good to send a couple of test messages whilst you're at CLEEF, maybe to some of your friends and family, and actually just confirm everything's working fine, and that you know how to use it when you need to. Don't be one of those hikers that are downloading everything at Lake Morena when they've realised they've forgotten to download all the stuff. But anyway, if you've got time, do it at CLEEF. That's part of the reason why I tend to recommend, as I said, stay overnight, because you've got all those little things you can do in the night before you start hiking. Oh, that's the other thing something you might be tempted to do at CLEEF is you're going to meet lots of friends or make new friends. Don't be tempted to just dive into forming a big hike group and a tramily early on. I think a lot of hikers sort of get drawn into that and they like the appeal of it. But remember, you're all different hikers from the start. You've all got different paces and different desires to where you want to start. Someone might be carrying blisters, someone may not. My advice to you is hike the first couple of weeks, and you will see regular faces, and you'll start seeing the same faces. And there you realise they're the people that are pretty much hiking the same style and stopping to your style, and they're the kind of people then you start thinking about, could they be do I want to try and hike with them, and maybe start forming a tramily. I think a lot of hikers make the mistake of starting and trying to form something from leaving CLEEF. And I would urge you to remember that if someone has blisters, please don't carry on with hard blisters. If taking a day off would let them heal, you may have to sort of say bye-bye to people who continue on. But you may catch them up, or you might meet an opportunity to meet completely different people. Don't be afraid to just ease off and say, look, I'm going to rest, and say goodbye to people, because there's a very good chance you're going to see them again anyway. But tramilies normally, I think they normally form around around Big Bear, which is about mile 250. It is something that I would urge you to let it happen organically, but that's my personal view. You'll hear other people saying different things. When you are hiking, I would urge you take photos, look behind you a lot, take photos with lots of people in. That's always been my mistake. I tend to take lots of vistas and things. I keep forgetting I should be in it and other people should be in it. The other thing is make sure you have an agreed kind of agenda with your family and friends, when you're sending the messages, that when they can expect it, but also let them know when not to panic, when not to worry about you. So if you go quiet for a certain time because you're in a low signal area or your batteries run out, just have an agreed kind of criteria to say, look, I will try and ring you if you don't hear from me for a couple of days, or just set the expectations so they know they're not going to start panicking and calling 911 and things like that. So make sure everyone around you knows what you're doing, or if you say you won't hear me for 3 months, then if that's what you want to do, that's fine too. But yeah, families do tend to worry, and sometimes they worry for good reason, and sometimes it can actually help a hiker who may be in difficulties. But we just try to, certainly through the Facebook groups, maybe signing the registers and logbooks, it does help that if someone is potentially gone missing, then at least they've got mechanisms like the local angels or the camp host can look at the logbooks and say, oh, that person came through, or no, I saw them, and things like that. It's just so they're whilst emergencies are obviously got to be manned and alerted in good time, but it's equally trying to avoid situations where too many false alarms occur as well. As you head up trail, I would encourage you to join the different Angel regional Facebook groups. There's a whole list. I'll try and post a link here, where you can actually get post things like, could someone possibly give me a lift on such and such a day, as you go through regions. It's very difficult to have one web page or one Facebook page where they coordinate all travel and all Angel activity through one site, and I think some people try to do that. It's a hiding to nothing. Just let the local regional people do it. They do it so well. The number of Facebook groups has exploded in the last couple of years, and it's really good, and the local Angels can respond directly with local knowledge to local inquiries. So don't forget to take advantage of that as well. And also, one last thing I should mention is, particularly it's an area specific issue. It just so happens near the start, if you're going to try and use your phone at CLEEF, at Lake Morena, and I think at Mount Laguna, don't be too surprised if you're on T-Mobile, the service isn't great. It just so happens that's one area that's not very well covered by T-Mobile, and it just happens to be near the start. Don't worry, T-Mobile, AT&T and Verizon, they all have a reasonable service up over the full course of the trail, but it's quite common that at the start, certainly at Lake Morena, where people are trying to use T-Mobile, they say, they're thinking they've screwed up. They haven't. It's just that one particular region, and it just happens to be near the start. So don't worry. They all kind of even out along the trail. So, okay. I'm sure there's other things I'm going to think about for the next video, but I think that's good. Hopefully that's helpful to you, at least just sort of in terms of planning, getting you to the terminus, and definitely making your plans to stay at CLEEF if you can. And might see you on trail this year, and happy hiking.